Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode with me, Andy, coming to you, as always, from the United Kingdom.
And let me welcome you to another episode with me, Scott, coming to you from Canada.
And it's an episode of the Tea and Timbits podcast, which is about global perspectives on business development to help you prosper. This month, we're continuing our theme of crisis management, and we're going to be talking about not confusing emotion with urgency. But before we get into that topic, Scott, do you have a story for us?
I sure do. Thanks, Andy. I have been in a couple of different situations lately where it's been a bit of a struggle, bit of a challenge, bit of conflict. Trying to nice mug, by the way. If you can't see this on YouTube or on audio, Andy's got a Canada flag on his mug. I have been in a few situations lately that have been sort of a little sticky, a little bit of conflict and friction. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Involved, and in these scenarios, there's been several conversations trying to sort out differences and come to alignment and understand the varying perspectives in the disagreement or the discussion. And I happen to be listening to another podcast. I don't just listen to our own. And I heard somebody refer to the concept of a steel man argument. And I was like, and then they kind of went on to have a debated discussion where somebody took on or sort of argued with the steel man framework. And I, just by sort of listening in context, I was like, oh, I kind of see what you're doing there. And then I looked it up and got a better understanding, which I'll share. But then I employed it in these kind of situations, and I was just blown away by the effectiveness. So anyway, if you're unfamiliar, a steel man argument is the opposite of a straw man, where a straw man is where you try to reduce somebody's argument to an oversimplification of what they were trying to say, so that it makes it easier to attack that argument, to poke holes on it. You've all probably heard somebody say, oh, well, you're just saying blah blah blah, and that just means XYZ, and therefore you're stupid. We've all been in those situations. Well, that's a very sort of cheap way of critiquing somebody, and you often get into sort of attacking person, and that doesn't work very well. The steel man is the opposite of that, where the first thing you do is re-articulate the other person's position. Then you strengthen it by saying, oh, I understand it. And if I were to even sort of reinforce it, I might also conclude these points as well, and then you offer your critique and sort of rebuttal, and therefore the other party really understands that you've heard them, because you've actually added weight and strength, but then you've still got a contrasting perspective on it. Makes your position that much more robust and that much more impactful. And it shows a bit of sort of humanism. You're like, oh, well, this person is listening to me, and it makes the other party a little bit more sympathetic to also digesting what you've said. So I thought I would share that. Probably many listeners are already familiar with what that kind of structure is all about and have heard of this before. But if you have, and I've just reminded you of something great, if you've never heard of it, give it a Google, put it into ChatGPT, try it out next time you're in a sticky situation. I found it super valuable.
When you started talking about steel man there, I was thinking it was one of these like endurance competition type things. But then I realized that was Ironman. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, I hadn't heard of it before. It makes perfect sense, of course, to give it a label. And thank you for that story. Let's continue into today's topic, though. We have the topic of don't confuse emotion with urgency. If I remember what you told me earlier, somehow managed to close the tab with all of the information on, so I'm going off script here.
You got it. You got
it. So, from your perspective, Scott, while I gather myself and figure out what I'm going to talk about, what does this mean to you? The topic of don't confuse emotion with urgency.
Well, I think if we're dealing with the overall theme here of crisis management, right, which I think is a bit of a dramatic label, but I think it certainly sort of frames the theme for everybody very quickly, so it's effective for that reason. But how many times have you received a call or an email from a client, from an associate, could be somebody on your team, could be somebody who's never even met you before, who's heard you're the problem solver for whatever this, and they're worked up, and they could be expressing a range of intense emotion. It could be they're very fraught. It could be they're very traumatized. It could be they're very angry. It could be that they're exasperated, right? There's definitely this this projection that is coming from the other person, like, and they might be in a crisis. They might be like, oh my God, if I can't fix this, I'm screwed. It could be, oh my God, whatever, you're responsible for putting me in this position. Or it could be, a lot of times, somebody else has suddenly put an unreasonable expectation on me as the person in the crisis, and now I am screwed, and I need my people to help me, or right. There's a whole varying degree of how people handle themselves in these situations and come forward. But and then how often does the sort of receiving party in that situation subconsciously sort of take on the projection of that emotion as a result of just sort of becoming a party to that moment. And so then your blood pressure rises, and your psychosomatic responses kick in, and you start to sort of be just as agitated, irritated, whatever sort of led to that situation. And then you turn around and try and take action and do something, and you're acting all of a sudden from this sense of urgency, and probably well intentioned, right? Like, okay, yeah, I can help this person. I want, and then you proceed with whatever response that you have, and you tend to drop something else. You tend to this shoots to the top of the priority list in your world.
In particular, in a sales deal, of course. I mean, you can find yourself in a situation like this where you start to, I don't know, you see people responding emotionally to a circumstance because they think they're going to lose the deal, and then they're panicking. And then it's an emotional response because, oh no, if I don't get this, I'm not going to close my deadlines, I'm not going to meet my quota, etc., etc., etc. And they end up losing the deal anyway because they're trying to fix the feelings rather than actually addressing the facts and the real problems that are being addressed.
Okay, now you've just highlighted like the other side of, like, I was coming at it from like the prospect perspective, like they've got a problem and they're coming into the salesperson, and the salesperson's trying to, like, if we use that scenario. But I really like sort of your framing as well. Like, the prospect doesn't have any emotion or urgency. It's the salesperson that's added that, emotion into the situation, because if they don't close the deal by the end of the quarter, they're not going to make their number or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean,
Um,
even as a leader, of course, I mean, if you've got a sales team who are coming to you with emotional challenges,
mhm,
and you're not able to distinguish the difference, then you are going to end up misallocating resources and I don't know, other sorts of bad decision making in that process, which can ultimately end up damaging your reputation as a leader as well as the
exactly.
company's reputation as well.
So that's just it, right? So we've all been in these situations. We've all
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Mm-hmm.
felt this way, and we've probably been on both sides of this equation, right? The person who's um just sort of entering in from a state of response, as opposed to sort of intent or purpose and logic. And so, when I confront this with my team, for example, it often comes across my desk because somebody calls and says, oh, XY client or prospect has just called, and oh, how are we going to fix this problem for them? And so first of all, like, after the moment passes, the coaching is like, listen, let's be a little bit more self-aware, that
Mm-hmm.
in the moment, recognize that there's a high level of emotion involved in this situation. And I'm not saying dismiss it, right? Because that is just as bad. If the other person doesn't see you expressing any empathy for their situation, or even willingness to help, well, that could scuttle a big relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
So, I'm like, listen, try if you can to just insert a buffer. It's counterintuitive to be like, you know what, you've caught me at a bad time, but in an hour I can get into this with you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just like, they think it's critical, and why would you possibly prioritize something else for the next hour?
Yeah.
Whatever. Hey, listen, I
Yeah.
have a standing call. I cannot cancel it, I'm afraid. But I promise to call you back, hypothetical, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Boy, is that powerful. You call, the other person has had a moment to collect themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and just, they may not have come to a new perspective. They may not have shifted their sense of their emotional state, or their sense of urgency, but the temperature comes down, right? So
Mm.
then you're able to communicate in a little bit more pragmatic, logical way, without the heat of the moment overwhelming
Mm.
what needs to be accomplished.
It can be very challenging when dealing cross cultures as well. And I imagine that you being in North America, dealing with your USA colleagues and your Canadian counterparts
Yeah.
is of course very often a big difference there, because from a USA perspective, everything is very much urgency, 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 now,
Yeah.
mostly emotionally driven,
Yeah.
not necessarily from a real genuine sense of urgency, and so filtering that out when you are on the receiving end of that triggers your own emotions, and then you're responding through fear, anxiety, frustration, even sometimes, like, oh, I've just got to get this done so this person leaves me alone. So it is very important, as you said, to be able to filter that out, take that breath, handle
Mhm.
that situation in a allowing them to take a breath perspective, but
Yeah.
also making them feel like action is being taken, and then analyzing that. Were they using I don't know, like, this feels off, this has to happen now kind of
Yeah.
language, or were they saying we need to have this particular thing done by the end of the day because it impacts on this thing if we don't get that by then?
Hmm.
Two very different scenarios. One is very much emotionally driven and one is very much a genuine urgency. But in the heat of the moment, when someone's maybe picking up the phone and shouting at you, or you're having those conversations, it can be very hard to distinguish that. So taking that step back and allowing the counterpart to take that step back is, of course, incredibly valuable, as you say.
And I don't know, have you what's the book by Chris Voss about negotiation?
I have
One of the
not read it. No.
concepts is mirroring.
Okay.
I mean, it's a lighter weight version. I wasn't intending on drawing this analogy to the Steelman argument, but you're
I
not
bet you were
trying to
really.
rebut the other person.
You've planned this episode so far ahead of time. I can tell.
But I guess mirroring is like a lightweight version there. You're just trying to show that you've heard, right? All you're doing is just sort of like saying back to the person what you've heard, so that they, oh yeah, okay, you did hear me. You just said the same words back to me that I said to you. Good, right? Like, it's a simple tactic, but it's effective in those cases. We're not trying to shift an understanding, gain an alignment, offer a different perspective. We're just trying to show a sense of empathy, as establish clear communication, lower the temperature in the situation. So that's another sort of tactic here is that mirroring communication. Repeat back to them so that they know that you've heard them. Give that buffer, like I just mentioned. But then when it is time to address it, I mean, this is where I think it probably does depend a little bit more on the brand or the style of business that you're operating. But in our world, in my world, it's very much about like, listen, we are the rational actors. We are the ones that are contemplative and intentional about the work that we do, the plans we build, the path we chart. So it is then saying, okay, here is sort of how I'm going to be able to help you. Here's the process that I'm going to follow now in order to get you where I can get you. Acknowledging that I might not be able to get you where you want to go, but this is where I can get you. And a little bit of clarity around, and so you can expect something, and the next update in 4 hours, the next thing in 2 days, a sort of level set conversation there. And then the biggest thing, at least in our world, my world, is when you're done with that interaction, it's got to be treated just as normally as any other request on the inside. So you need to be that filter. Like, listen, if there's genuine urgency, if the building is burning down, if something is broken and it's causing pain, damage, monetary, impact, sure, like, do what you need to do to pull your resources in and your other people and get them to prioritize this. But we have escalation steps for doing that, and it doesn't require getting all worked up about it. Just, hey, so and so, listen, I know you're in midstream on this task. I'm gonna need you to switch over to this one. It's frustrating. It's an interruption. As the soonest you can do it, let me know. And just be very procedural and matter of fact about it, because then you're going to get more productivity out of the people that you do need to bring in to solve the problem.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. It's that communication, that language, that ability to pause and reflect, and just recognizing whether it's an emotional situation or whether it's a truly urgent situation, is the difference between effective leadership, effective sales, and effective business as a whole, regardless of what department you're in. And of course, if you're in a situation where like every scenario is being treated as urgent and it must happen now, then ultimately nothing gets treated as urgent. So it's
and we have certain
challenging
people on the other side of the table whose default personality
of course
is to always present this way. Everything's urgent, everything's a crisis, everything has to happen now. And they're sometimes it's masked in ambition as opposed to disorganization, right? And I find that when those folks start to become acclimatized to how you're going to handle their
Mm.
call every single time, it becomes way more manageable. And then
Oh yeah, yeah.
they show up sort of having already adjusted themselves for how they know it's going to go when they call Andy, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And just an important point for the listeners before we close out this one is, keeping everyone calm is about reassessing the situation. It's not about saying yes to everything.
Oh yeah. Right. Good point. This is not actually about doing what they're expecting needs to be done. Yep.
No, but it's it's not saying that you shouldn't. It's saying that you take that step back and you have that genuine assessment, even under pressure. It's very hard, but to practice that is the difference between effective sales, effective leadership, and effective business.
Yep, love it.
Yeah. I think we've definitely covered that topic quite well, but there's plenty more that we could probably talk about on that. So if you're listening and you'd like to know any more about the difference between emotion and urgency and how to identify that and how to handle it, do get in touch. You can do so by going to our website and looking at the various different ways you can get in touch with us. And we'd like to encourage you to do that on LinkedIn because currently we can't get into our email. So
it's true.
So thank you very much, Scott. It has been a pleasure, and look forward to speaking to you again next time.
Thanks, Andy.